and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. We're back again, and today we're taking a look at Footnote to Murder. That's right. This is an episode that is all about Jessica Fletcher at an awards ceremony with a friend of hers, and somebody else gets murdered and he gets blamed for it. And she's on the warpath to try and clear his name. Now, we're going to look at the main players in this particular little game. First off, let's look at our victim, Hemsley Post, who is played by Kenneth Mars. Kenneth Mars is known for The Little Mermaid, the Disney movie. He does the voice of Triton, King Triton, in the Little Mermaid movie. He also plays the Marshal in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He plays Inspector Kemp in Young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks movie. And he plays Hugh Simon in What's Up, Doc? I've never seen that one. I have seen Kenneth Mars in a few things, though. I definitely remember him in a few things. Let's see, what's he been in recently? He was the voice in Grandpa Longneck, The Land Before Time television series, 2007 to 2008. That's the last thing he did. 221 acting credits to his name. What else has he been in? Well, he's been King Triton in all of the Kingdom Hearts games, I guess. Or most of them. What else? Malcolm in the Middle. Otto Mancuser. Apparently he was 25 episodes of that he was in. What else here? Is that what I think it is? Yes, it is. He played Benny in 2 different episodes of The Pretender. I remember The Pretender. I own all of it. It's one of my all-time favorite series. I was actually thinking of doing a Pretender rewatch podcast a while ago, before I started doing this one. That's a bit of trivia for you. What else we got? Police Academy, the series. I don't remember that. Dr. Otis P. Quackenbush. Wow. What a name. Weird Science, the TV series. He played a couple of characters in that. I don't remember the Weird Science TV series, but I do remember the Weird Science movie. The Pink Panther TV series. The Little Mermaid TV series. He was King Triton in that. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, episode Shadow Play. He was Cullius. Oh, wow. He did additional voices in The Pirates of Dark Water. I remember that. Wow. Fievel's American Tales TV series. He did the voice of Sweet William on 6 episodes of that. No way! Total way. He was the voice of Tuscanini in Darkwing Duck. Wow. Wow. That takes me back. He's done a lot of voice work. He's got that type of a voice, that booming voice. So it's pretty obvious that he's good for that. Let's see, what else? Oh my god. DuckTales. He was Vulcan in the DuckTales, the old one. Where is it? The Flintstone Kids. He's done a lot of voice work, which is very, very fitting. Wow. The MathNet TV series. Now that takes me back. I used to watch that quite a bit. Huh. Murder She Wrote. There it is. Just that episode. Uh, he was only in the one episode of Murder She Wrote as Hemsley Post. But yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff over the years. I remember seeing him in a few different TV shows off and on over the years. He was always recognizable. So that's pretty cool. He is our murder victim. He is the one who ends up dead. We have his wife, Alexis Post, played by Diana Muldaur. D-A-U-R. Diana Muldaur. She is known for playing Alexandra in The Other, Lois in McHugh, Kate Keller in The Miracle Worker, and what I know her best as, she was Dr. Pulaski in Star Trek The Next Generation. That's right, Dr. Pulaski. She also did the voice of Dr. Leslie Tompkins in Batman the Animated Series for a number of episodes. What else? L.A. Law, Rosalind Shays. The last work she's done, she's still alive according to IMDb, but the last work she did was the Batman Animated Series. Star Trek The Next Generation was a number of years before that. L.A. Law, as I said, she was Dr. Alice Foley in A Year in the Life. She was a Dr. Janet Carlisle in 3 episodes of Quincy M.E. Oh, she played Helen Banner in the Incredible Hulk TV series in 1 episode, which is kind of cool. What else have we got? Boop, 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 boop. No, that's going back too far. We've gone too far. We need to go forward more and find Murder, She Wrote. Yep. Only the 1 episode of Murder, She Wrote as Alexis Post, the wife of our murder victim, Hensley Post. We have the friend of Jessica Fletcher, Horace Lynchfield, played by Paul Sand. Paul Sand is quite the interesting actor. I'm pretty sure I've seen him in a couple things before, but we'll see. We've got The Main Event. He plays David. I don't know if I've seen that one. Looks like a boxing match between a man and a woman on the poster, though. We've got Chuck and Buck. He played Barry. The Hot Rock. He played Greenberg. And Coach Finstock in Teen Wolf 2. There's an old movie. Last acting credit was a short called Spark, in which he played Tom. What else has he done? He was Rabbi Polonsky in a few episodes of Joan of Arcadia. Time of Your Life, he was the theater director in 3 episodes, I guess. Dr. Malcolm White in an episode of Sliders. I remember Sliders. Now there's a fun little show. Yeah, he's been in a couple of shows that I've seen. And I've probably seen those episodes that he was in. Quantum Leap, Night Court, The Twilight Zone, Who's the Boss, Magnum P.I., he was in an episode. And he was only in this episode of Murder, She Wrote as Horace Lynchfield. St. Elsewhere, Dr. Michael Ridley, I think I saw that as well, that he was in. So yeah, he's been in a few things that I've seen, but not a lot of like big name events. He's definitely got a very iconic look to him. for sure. He's got a very unusual look to his to him, which I quite enjoyed in this episode. Who else do we have? We have the ones that are investigating the crime. We have Pat Harrington Jr. as Assistant District Attorney Mel Comstock. Who passed away January 6th of last year, 2016. Sorry to hear that. He is known for Dwayne F. Schneider in One Day at a Time, Arlington Hughes as the President's Analyst, additional voices in Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, and he played Dad in a Garfield Christmas special. Well, there you have it. His last acting role was as Mr. Sheridan in Hot in Cleveland. He was in an episode of Las Vegas, the TV series, an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Diagnosis Murder, Fantasy Island. That was 1999 Fantasy Island, wow. He did some voices in Real Monsters. What else has he done? Duckman, Private Dick / Family Man. He did a voice in an episode of that, I guess. Interesting. Definitely does some voice work for stuff. Here we go. Oh, interesting. Interesting. He played ADA Mel Comstock in this episode. He did another episode in 1987 as Gunner Global? Is that what that is? Gunner Global. In 1987, in 1989, he did Lieutenant Lou Brickman in an episode. And in 1991, he played Nick Culhane. So he's played 4 different characters over the years. And there's The Love Boat and a bunch of other stuff that I haven't really seen. But he did quite an interesting character in this one, as you will see shortly. We also have Lieutenant Meyer, played by Ron Masak. Ron Masak, sorry. Now, he is somebody that I have seen in quite a few things here and there. He is actually known for Murder, She Wrote. But I'll get to that in a minute. He's also known for Paul Zabriskie in Ice Station Zebra, Lieutenant Lawrence Ruff in Tora Tora Tora, and Herbie Maddox in Harper Valley PTA, which looks like a bit of a comedy. He is currently filming, according to IMDb, The Curse of the Gorgon, and Angels on Tap is in post-production. What else has he done? Medal of Honor, video game. So yeah, he's done some video game work and some voice work, definitely. But he is most known for being on Murder, She Wrote, for a very good reason. Let's see here. Yep. Footnote to Murder is his first episode in 1985. He played Marty Giles in 1987 in an episode. And then... Yep. So he's played 2 episodes out of 41. So 2 episodes as 2 different characters, and then 39 episodes as Sheriff Mort Metzger. So he was in Murder, She Wrote for a long time as the same character. 39 episodes. That's insane. We'll see him in, I think, season 4? Because it's 1988 is the first one, and this one was 1985. So this will be the ending. The way the seasons worked, it started in 84, ended in 85. So then it'll be 85 to 86, 86 to 87, and then 87 to 88. So yeah, I think it'll be around season 4 that we will see Sheriff Metzger. I look forward to that. And he's been in a few other things over the years. Police Story TV series. He played a bunch of different characters in that. And other ones stretching back forever and a day. But that is the one he is most known for. And I remember I'd forgotten that he played a sheriff in Murder, She Wrote. But I remembered seeing him before. And I was pretty sure he was a cop as well. And I was right. I was right. He's pretty good, though. He's a good actor. He's got a very good old boy feel to him, which I like. Who else has been in here? Well, we have a number of writers. We have Hemsley Post is one of them, as is Jessica Fletcher and Horace Lynchfield. We have Lucinda Lark, played by Constance Forsland. And Lucinda Lark, or Constance Forsland, is known for Callie Bloom in Village of the Damned. I remember that movie. Madeline in River's Edge. She actually played Marilyn Monroe in this year's Blonde. Interesting. And Jenny in The Way We Were. She is currently in a TV series called Avenue 43, 2011 to 2017. She plays Barbara in 29 episodes. She's in an episode of Castle, Mrs. Samantha Northcliffe. She played Devon's mother, Fiona, in an episode of Sliders, a number of years back. 1996, in fact. Just the episode of Murder, She Wrote, Lucinda Lark. Magnum P.I. She doesn't have a lot of acting credits to her name. 38, in fact. Between 1968 and 2017. She's got 38 acting credits. That's not a lot. But what she's done, I have definitely not... What I've seen of her has been good. So, that's that. And I liked her in this episode. She's an interesting character. Let's see. Who else we got? Tiffany Harrow, played by Morgan Brittany. Tiffany Harrow is a member of the awards committee for this particular one. She's not a writer herself. She's a publisher. She is best known for Catherine Wentworth in Dallas for 6 years, Baby June in Gypsy, Sarah in Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. I have never even heard of that. Interesting. And Alice Glass in LBJ The Early Years, 1987. 82 acting credits. Most recent is Georgina in Americanizing Shelley, 2007. Before that, some TV stuff going on here. Mackenzie Hart in a couple episodes of Melrose Place. Tiffany Harrow in this episode of Murder, She Wrote, and Candace Ashcroft in an episode in 1990. 56 episodes of Dallas, the TV series. That's quite a long one. Kate Simpson in 14 episodes of Glitter. Mary Lou Pringle in The Dukes of Hazzard TV series. The Hazardville Horror. Wow. And in the TV series Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, she played Raylan Darren in an episode. Why not? Why not? Who else do we have? There is also Vincent Baguetta, who played Frank Lipinski. 71 acting credits to his name. He's most known for One Life to Live as David Rinaldi, Ray Morelli in Days of Our Lives, Eddie Capra in the Eddie Capra Mysteries, and Collier in Embryo. Most recent acting credit was 1995. He played a police captain in an episode of Renegade, and was uncredited for it. Wow. In 1995, so he's been out of the place for a while. The Murder, She Wrote TV series, he played Frank Lipinski in this episode. 1987, he played another character, Bert Puzo. And in 1990, he played Antonio Carboni. Oh! And he played Father Jarvis in 2 episodes of Freddy's Nightmares, the TV series. The Nightmare on Elm Street TV series that was kind of... had a couple episodes, or a couple seasons of it, with strange things. Good old Freddy's Nightmares. I'm going to have to see if I can dig up Freddy's Nightmares and watch some of it. Because I remember seeing an episode or two years and years ago, but never really get into it. So yeah, he's been, he seems to be playing a lot of, he was Eddie Capra in the Eddie Capra Mysteries, as I said, for 13 episodes of that. Lou Pellegrino in Chicago Story. He played John Moretti in 7 episodes of The Colbys. He seems to play a lot of Italian fellows. Definitely a bit of a typecast actor, I'd say. Which is quite sad. I hate to see typecasting. We also have Debbie Delancey, played by Talia Balsam, who is a young lady, young writer who is at the award ceremony getting autographs and trying to get people to read her short story. She is known as Mona Sterling in Mad Men, Dallas in Divorce, HBO series, Sandra Kurtzman in No Strings Attached, and Mrs. Shapiro in The Whackness, whatever that is. Her most recent acting credit is in 2017, Z, The Beginning of Everything, or Zed, The Beginning of Everything. I don't know what that is. Okay. A biography series based on the life of Zelda Sayer Fitzgerald. Okay. Interesting. She plays a character in that. Um, Dallas in Divorce, as I said. Mad Men, Mona Sterling in 13 episodes of that. Over 7 years. So I guess she wasn't in every episode, but she kept showing up. Here and there. Flash forward the TV series. Surgeon General Anita Ralston. Marla Malone, Without a Trace, 7 episodes. Julie Lawner in L.A. Doctors. But where? Where is the murder she wrote? There it is. So yeah, she plays Debbie Delancey in this episode, and she plays Julia Pritzer in another episode in 1990. So that should be interesting. Interesting. And last but not least, our rounding out our cast of characters, we have Robert Reed playing Adrian Winslow. He passed away many years ago, 1992. He is most known for... Oh, really? I didn't know that. Robert Reed, he played Mike Brady. And somebody else in the Brady Bunch, the TV series. He played Kenneth Preston in The Defenders. He played Johnny Lubitsch in The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. And he played Dr. Adam Rose in Nurse. Played a couple characters in Jake and the Fat Man. That was his last acting credit. 1992. Murder, She Wrote. He played Adrian Winslow. In this one, he played Jackson in 1998. And he played Truman Calloway Esquire in 1990. He played Mike Brady in 5 episodes of the TV series of The Brady Bunch, 1990. The 1990 TV series, okay. But also all the rest. A Very Brady Christmas, he was Mike Brady in 1988. He played, where is it? Nurse, the TV series, yep. Galactica 1980, Dr. Donald Mortensen. The Runaways, The Brady Bunch Variety Hour. 9 episodes of that TV series. Dr. William Reynolds in Roots, he played. And The Brady Bunch, Grandpa Henry Brady, as well as Mike Brady, in 116 episodes of The Brady Bunch. Dear goodness, that's a lot. And Lieutenant Adam Tobias in Mannix TV series. So that's kind of cool. He's been in a lot of stuff over the years. Robert Reed. Okay. So those are our players in the game. And our story starts off with a wonderful view of New York, showing a bridge. There's rain going, lightning coming down. We see several shots of the New York City streets, cabs going on. Then we have a slow pan down to a diner where we see a man sitting in Lexington Avenue Diner, in fact, sitting there writing. And this is Horace Linfield in a suit, staring out at the rain, thinking and muttering to himself, occasionally writing down a few words here and there as he's talking to himself. and he finally tries to get himself a cigarette out of the case, but there is none. And then he pulls out a gun, and it looks like he's about to shoot himself. And we hear Jessica talking to Horace about those things are going to kill him, cigarettes. And we find out that the gun is actually a lighter shaped like a gun. And he lights up a cigarette, and Jessica sits down, and they have a very congenial conversation with each other about mostly themselves. He asks about some people back in Cabot Cove, and he says that Horace left a string of broken hearts back then. Back in Cabot Cove. She asks what he's writing, and he says it's a little sonnet, and he starts reading some of it to her, and Jessica pulls a face. And he's just like, "You're right, it's crap," and he balls it up and throws it away. And then they realize that they're going to be late for the award ceremony. They need to get going. And as they go to leave, he grabs an umbrella with a very uniquely carved head or handle. You get to see the handle up close as he grabs it and does a little flourish with it and whatnot, and heads out into the rain with Jessica. The next thing we see is an apartment, a guy coming in, taking off his clothes. He's got groceries, one of the paper, and he's looking at the paper. And something catches his eye on this paper. This is Frank Lipinski. And he sees somebody here, and he's getting visibly upset. We see the Gotham Book Awards, and there's a picture of Hemsley Post on the front cover. And he gets so upset he slams the paper down, and he's looking very, very, very angrily. So he goes and grabs his keys and runs off. The next thing we cut to is Hemsley Post doing push-ups in his room, breathing heavily and counting slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And somebody ends up knocking on the door, and he goes from 7 to 20 immediately, and then gets up and opens the door, and there's the lovely young brunette lady, Tiffany Harrow, the publisher, who's shows up. Mr. Hemsley Post is being ever so charming and eloquent as he spins words out like they're made out of gold and silk to her. He even offers her a drink. Of course, she notices a manuscript sitting on his bed and asks about his new book. And he says, of course, it's the definitive book on the Vietnam War. But he throws the manuscript in his briefcase and closes it up. And he makes mention that he's got the only copy of it, and not even his publisher has seen it or read it. But if she would like to come back later tonight, he might be able to read her a little bit of it. She looks like she might actually take him up on that offer. There's some really heavy-handed innuendo that passes between them. Of course, somebody knocks on the door and interrupts them. And we find out it's his wife, Alexis Post. And he, of course, introduces her to Tiffany. And it introduces Tiffany to his ex-wife. She, of course, goes, Miss Harrow decides to excuse herself and leaves with the glass of alcohol that he'd given her, and then ends up handing it back in through the door. And Mrs. Post, of course, brings up the fact that she, or Hemsley, owes her money. $264,000, in fact. And she wants that money ASAP because she heard from his publisher that he's already gotten a six-figure advance on his new book. So she wants that money, or else she'll be taking him to court. There's definitely, what I found about this scene, there's definitely some animosity there, but there's also some chemistry as well. I could believe that they used to be married, they used to be happily married, before they ended up splitting up. I can believe that there's chemistry between them. It was very, very believable. So I really liked that moment. It was a nice touch. And it was cool seeing Miss Pulaski, the doctor, that I remember from Star Trek. Seeing her acting, it was quite interesting. She leaves then, and basically kind of gives him a mild threat that she doesn't want to have to send her lawyer after him, but she will. He definitely seems a bit upset after she's gone. Very, very sad. The next thing we see is, of course, Mr. Adrian Winslow heading in through the lobby, talking with one of his friends. He's got a very high-end way of speaking, very, very erudite and upper crust way of speaking, and he looks the part as well. We see Debbie Delancey come out and ask for his autograph, and also she wants to give a short story to Adrian Winslow, and in the hopes that he'll read it. He, of course, does not take the story and just kind of leaves her there after signing her book. We see Mr. Post in the bathroom, combing his hair and whatnot, sprucing himself up in front of the mirror, when Frank Lipinski walks in and demands to see him, to talk to him. He tries to blow it off, saying, no, I don't give autographs, I make it a thing, until he tells the guy his name. It's a name that Mr. Helmsley recognizes. They get into a bit of a match. Helmsley Post calls him Soldier Boy. And Frank Lipinski pretty much dominates the fight. Ends up getting his arm twisted behind him. Starting to demand some things from him, some answers. Someone comes in the bathroom and Mr. Post yells to get security that he's being robbed. The security guard, of course, comes running in, and Mr. Lipinski ends up making short work of the guard and makes his escape. Next thing we see is Jessica and Horace coming into the hotel for the awards. And Debbie Delancey comes up again, asking for Miss Fletcher's autograph, and asks if she'll read the short story as well that she has. If she would. Miss Fletcher's a little hesitant. Horace is, of course, I really need a drink. I need one now. My throat's closing up. I'm so parched. He's saying, which kind of pressures Jessica as being like, yes, I'll take it and read it, and I'll get back to you as soon as I have. They head off then, Jessica with that story in hand, and into the awards cocktail party before. They're hanging their stuff up, their umbrellas and their coats and whatnot, and we see the view through through the window because you can see the distortion of the water running down it. You see Adrian Winslow talking to what's her name? what is her name? Lucinda Lark, about Lucinda's new book, which is, I believe it was entitled The Wild Girl or something like that, or A Girl Gone Wild, or Untamed or something along those lines. There's definitely an innuendo that her book is very much sexually explicit. We see Mr. Lynchfield meeting Miss Harrow. I think it's Harrow. Tiffany Harrow. He tries to flirt with her to no end before she wanders off to find herself. We see Mr. Post talking about his book, and Adrian Winslow starts trading words with Mr. Post about who's the better writer and whatnot. Mr. Post, of course, offers to give him a thrashing like he did 10 years ago, to which Mr. Winslow said, well, 10 years ago, I didn't have a black belt like I have now. And Mr. Post wisely thinks better of going up against that. It's a bit of a tense scene, and Jessica's watching this whole thing because she's very perceptive. We see Lynchfield reciting some poetry because he's a poet to Larkin there, Lucinda Lark, getting her very excited, I guess you could say. Mr. Post tries to pull her away from Lynchfield. Lynchfield makes an offhand comment about not having read his book, his last book. He couldn't get through it. They trade a bit of words, and then Post ends up and punches Mr. Lynchfield. Gets into a bit of a fisticuffs battle. There is a wonderful bit where Jessica's like trying to trying to keep the two of them from fighting. Mr. Post is like all getting ready for a fight, dukes up when Horace pulls out his gun lighter. He pulls it out with like a big flourish and whatnot, so everybody sees the gun. And of course, Mr. Post is like, "Oh God, no! What are you doing?" Then he like clicks the lighter part and lights a cigarette, all nonchalantly. It's a wonderful little moment. Then it cuts to the next day, and Jessica is knocking on a door, looking for Mr. Post, because she mistakenly took his umbrella and she wanted to return it. Except Mr. Post doesn't answer the door. It's Mr. Comstock, who's a stranger at this time. He, of course, finds it very interesting that she has his umbrella. She ends up going into the room and seeing a detective and a plainclothes officer, and then the dead body of Mr. Post with an umbrella that was a sword stabbed into Mr. Post. A very distinctive umbrella. Mr. Lynchfield's. She, of course, lets Mr. Comstock know that that's not her umbrella. Hers must be at somebody else's. Lieutenant Myers there. But Mr. ADA Comstock is very... he seems to be very arrogant and very much wanting to make himself look good in front of the press because of upcoming elections. So all through this wonderful scene where Jessica's looking around the scene, the ADA is making an officer keep an eye out for the press. He's making a phone call to somebody at the newspapers to let them know that he's got a big scoop for them. Jessica, of course, is finding clues and making mention of the fact that there's no manuscript here, and that it's a very valuable manuscript, and maybe they should be looking for it. It seems to be stolen. Lieutenant Meyer checks under the bed and finds a hotel key with a room number of, I think, 2412, which is interesting because this hotel doesn't have a 24th floor, so it mustn't be from here. She also finds a pair of reading glasses and makes note of lipstick on the sheet or on the pillow and whatnot. So maybe he had a Mr. Post had a romantic encounter last night. And there's a book from Lucinda Lark with a signed book dated yesterday, in fact. She finds these reading glasses on the bed, under the cover, and she finds a letter on the table written from Mr. Lipinski with a death threat in it. And then maybe the ADA would like to check up on that. He definitely is telling her to not mess around with the crime scene, but she's not listening. She tries to bring all these little things to his attention, and he's too busy to notice. Someone knocks at the door. Lieutenant Meyer gets it, and it's a couple of other uniforms from the crime lab here to do some stuff. Mr. Comstock ends up grabbing the glasses that Jessica found on the crime scene on the bed, stuffing them into her purse, and sending her out with her purse, without her the wiser. And he doesn't want her help at all. He's got his own beliefs. The next thing we see is Mr. Lynchfield in the ADA's office talking with him, and Jessica's there, as is Lieutenant Meyer. He, of course, denies killing Mr. Post, but that he's had a few drinks and he can't really remember all of his night. Before that, however, they bring in Tiffany Harrow, who is asked where she was. She, of course, says she was with Adrian Winslow having dinner that night. And that is all that they need to know. Now, one of the interesting bits that they end up mentioning over the course of the episode up to this point is that there is a strong indication that Adrian Winslow, that particular writer, may be homosexual, because he's written about Greeks, and they make mention. Mr. Post makes mention of his writing being about a bunch of Greek men mincing around. So there's definitely that undertone. They don't come right out and say it, but there's definitely that undertone. And they don't seem to draw attention to this in a negative light, which is something I've noticed about this show. It just seems to be like this is subtly hinted at, but it's not hinted at in a way that is a negative context. Just simply, this may be a fact. Now, when Horace ends up saying that he doesn't actually remember if he killed him or not, Mr. Comstock is of the opinion that that's good enough for him. Book him. He gets on the phone immediately to go and talk to somebody while Lieutenant Meyer takes Horace off. And Jessica reads him the riot act, that if he isn't going to find out who actually did it, then she will. And oh, she is fit to be tied. And she ends up talking to Lieutenant Meyer and accidentally distracting him just long enough for the elevator door to close with Horace inside all by himself. So Lieutenant Meyer ends up running off down the stairs after Mr. Lynchfield. We see Mr. Lynchfield coming out of the elevator into a large crowd of men and women being led off. Now he, of course, Mr. Lynchfield talks to one of the officers that are leading these group of men, saying, I think there's been a mistake. And the officer's just like, no, you get going, you shouldn't have done it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, a lawyer comes out and informs the police officer that they need to drop all the Johns because they drew a certain judge who's only interested in the girls, doesn't care about the Johns. So they round up the girls and usher them into the courtroom, and all the Johns get told to go home. He, of course, goes to the officer and says, I think there's been a mistake, because he's trying to be cooperative. And the police officer's like, nope, there's no mistake, you're free to go. So he's like, okay. And he heads his way out. He doesn't seem to be entirely all there. He seems to have his very head in the clouds sort of guys. The next thing we see is Comstock on the phone, basically saying that we've definitely got the guy. He's in custody right now. I'll have a press conference later. And as he's hanging up, Lieutenant Meyer comes in and he's like, we got a problem. Because they ended up losing their chief suspect. Jessica is, of course, leaving a message somewhere that if Mr. Lynchfield comes in to give her a call, she ends up meeting Miss Harrow, Tiffany Harrow, who seems to be cleaning a bit of dust off of one of her contacts out of her eyes. That she makes mention of, and they end up talking to each other a bit more. She's got some questions for Miss Harrow about her alibi in particular. And specifically the fact that she ends up dropping the hint that there definitely is a manuscript. And she saw it when she was in his room the day before the party. And she gets the information from her about the confrontation that Mr. Post had with his wife over money. Jessica then pays a visit to Alexis Post to drop some information on her that she's aware of this fight and is trying to clear her friend. Miss Post, of course, didn't kill him, she says, but she can't deny that they talked about money. And Jessica is unfortunately having to leave there by herself. She never saw this manuscript that's disappeared, and that from what she knew, her husband has been unable to write for years now. Leaving Jessica in a bit of a quandary. We see Jessica heading through the revolving doors, and Horace is in the revolving door as well. So they end up seeing each other and having a bit of a moment. Jessica, of course, asks, where have you been? You're a fugitive now. We need to take you to see the detective right away. So he brings. They go back to the ADA's office. He's currently in the office with what's her name, Lucinda Lark. He of course mentions that he bought her book and would like her autograph, and that he found it very graphic. Uh, he definitely seems to be hitting on her when Jessica Fletcher comes in with Mr. Lynchfield. Uh, they, of course, ask Miss Lark while they're there where she was the night of the murder. And she claims that she was with uh, Horace Lynchfield all night long. And it was an amazing and romantic evening, which just blows Horace's mind because he can't remember it. He's like, I wish I could. I really wish I could remember that. So he gets set free because her testimony basically exonerates him. They're in a very busy and bustling police station, having words, talking. She's trying to get some, information from him, and then she's like, "Just go back to the hotel. I need to go to Brooklyn." And she's like, "Don't ask." So she takes a cab down to Brooklyn and finds Mr. Lipinski, Frank Lipinski, talking to him about his relationship with Mr. Hemsley Post, and that he wrote a threatening letter to him, and she'd like to know why. He, of course, says it's none of her business, and blows her off and heads off to do his own thing. One of his co-workers comes in and has a word with Miss Fletcher. They have a bit of a talk, and she asks about his, on a hunch, she asks about Mr. Lipinski's book that he was writing about the Vietnam War. And he's like, well, he's only written the one that I know of, unless he could be working on another. Aha! Now we're starting to get a picture of why he was sending threatening letters. Because Mr. Post was writing a book about the Vietnam War as well. Maybe Mr. Post stole this book. Perhaps. Jessica heads into a phone booth and makes a phone call. As she goes to search for some money, she pulls out the glasses and kind of gives them an odd look. So she calls the Mr. Comstock and again suggests that they investigate Mr. Lipinski for this. The next thing we see is Jessica heading into a bookstore and meeting Adrian Winslow, author of Pericles at Parnassus. They definitely have a bit of a talk. He kind of disparages her novels as being, very simple to figure out, but she kind of plays a little bit on his ego, and Mr. Winslow proves to be quite the gossip. Because he lets it be known that he thinks it's Alexis Post, because she's been lending him money for years, Mr. Post, for years and years, and that's who he thinks killed Mr. Post. He doesn't think that Mr. Lynchfield could do it because the man's incompetent. But it's just the wonderful little scene of him being like, he's like this erudite, very high-end guy, and yet he is such a gossip. And he gets off on it because he's got this thing like he just can't wait to tell you what he knows. It's a wonderful little scene. I loved it. The next thing we see is Jessica heading back to the hotel and running into Miss Delancey again, who is asking about the short story that she gave to Jessica. And Jessica apologizes. She just hasn't had time to read it yet. It's been such a busy couple days. But as soon as she would read it, and as soon as she did, she would get back to her. The next thing we see is Tiffany Harrow reading a manuscript in her hotel room. Jessica, of course, is at the door and wants to talk to her for a minute. Tiffany, of course, goes and tucks the manuscript that she was reading away, as well as the notes, in a dresser drawer. And of course, Jessica says that it is asks about her umbrella, and that she thinks that she has Jessica's umbrella. Of course, she goes and says, no, I've got my umbrella here, but it's not her umbrella. And that's when she lets the bombshell on Miss Harrow that Adrian Winslow denied being at dinner with her. And she finally ends up admitting to Jessica that she had been waiting for Mr. Post, but Mr. Post never showed up at her hotel room, and that she took a couple sleeping pills and fell asleep, and that the manuscript she was reading was a biography that somebody had given to her, and actually lets Jessica have a look at it so she can see. So she does believe Miss Harrow when she agrees to not being the one to have killed him. The next thing we see is Mr. Lipinski in his apartment looking through a manuscript. There's a knock on the door. He goes and opens it, and it's Lieutenant Meyer and Mr. Comstock. Mr. DA says he has a warrant to search the premises, so Mr. Lipinski slams the door, runs and grabs the briefcase, and throws the manuscript in it and heads out the fire escape. They kick the door down and run in. Of course, he makes it them unable to follow him down the fire escape. And a chase ensues. But before he can get away, the police have him cornered. And they arrest him, Mr. Lipinski, for the murder of Helmsley Post. And they even take the briefcase he has, which is Helmsley Post's briefcase. And they find the book inside, the manuscript. And of course, Mr. Lipinski confesses immediately. I did it. I killed Helmsley Post. So everything's all wrapped up. A nice, neat little bow. Or is it? There's still 8 minutes left in the episode. No, something else is going to happen. Something else. So we see Jessica heading in a cab with Horace somewhere else. And even though everything's all wrapped up, Jessica's like, there's still something I can't quite put my finger on that doesn't add up. So many people who have motive to kill him, and they're all covering their tracks. Horace, of course, notices the short story from Debbie Delancey that she actually got a chance to read, and it's pretty good. It's all right. And then, of course, she finds the glasses again that she needs to give to Mr. Comstock. She forgot about it. She believes them to be Helmsley Posts. And, of course, Horace is, I don't know. I think if Helmsley Post was going to need glasses, he definitely needs something a bit more macho than this. And that makes Jessica realize something. She gets the cabbie to pull over, gives him a bunch of money to pay for the cab, and gets out. She needs to go see an optometrist. Horace, of course, is asking the driver if he knows a good bar around. The next thing we see is Jessica at an optometrist's office, getting her eyes checked and compared with the glasses that she had from the crime scene. And he says that whoever her optometrist was before him, they need to study Braille because these are completely unsuitable for her. So he can get a prescription done up for her to have good glasses. But Jessica asks if he can put those lenses in a new set of frames. The reason being because the next scene, we see Jessica sitting with Debbie Delancey, going over the short story, and that she wrote some notes on the back of it. And of course, she goes to try and read them, and she's just like, "Oh, I can't." It's like it's so awful when you reach my age and you can find the words, but you just can't see them. She asks to borrow her glasses, and ends up accidentally, quote unquote, dropping them in her lap, and then pulls out a new set of glasses under the table, the ones that she switched the frames on. And she's like, "Oh heavens, no, that's worse." And then she gives those new glasses, the ones she found at the crime scene, over to Debbie, and asks if Debbie could read it. And of course Debbie can read it, and says, "Oh yes, the beginnings really is quite vague. I should fix that up and such." And then Jessica goes into the fact that the character in her story about the girl's older brother that went off to war was named Joe, but shouldn't his real name be Frank Lipinski? Because this is Frank Lipinski's younger sister. And now we find out what's going on. And here comes the confession. Because we found out that she ended up going to Helmsley Post's room to talk to him. And of course, he invites her in and everything, and tries to be charming and whatnot. But of course, he's had quite a lot to drink. So he kind of forces himself a little bit on her. And she, of course, struggles and pushes him away. She grabs an umbrella to, defend herself. He, of course, grabs the other end and pulls it off because it's a sword cane or an umbrella cane. But he's too drunk to realize it, that there's now a sword that she's holding in her hand, and he goes and leans in and impales himself on it. So it was an accident. And because she doesn't realize that her brother has been arrested for this murder, she's like, I need to go tell them that it was me. And Jessica's like, you should definitely tell him, because from where she sits, it's a clear case of self-defense. And she's pretty sure that a jury will see it the same way, if it even comes to that. So things kind of end on a happy note. We then see Horace wandering out of the Book Awards banquet, looking for his cigarettes, and Jessica comes out to give him a trophy, saying, "You can't just leave in the middle of your own acceptance speech." And he's like, "Sure I can, I won." She, of course, nags at him because he's looking for a drink, and they end up stopping at the little concession stand to buy something. He's going to light his cigarette with his lighter, which is a gun, scares the young lady behind the counter to the point that she presses the alarm. And Jessica's like, you should also quit smoking because it's bad for you. And the credits roll. And it's a wonderful, wonderful little end, humorous end to a very interesting and humorous little episode. So that's it for this episode of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed listening to me. I've noticed that a couple of people have been posting in comments for some of these that my podcast doesn't have the episode visuals. That is because I am that's illegal. It's illegal to do that. So this is a podcast only for audio listening. One of these days I'll figure out how to actually make these into audio files. I'm sure I can figure it out eventually and get things done up that it's an actual podcast that people can download and listen if they want. It's up to them. But so far, people seem to have been enjoying it. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comments section. Let me know what you think of that particular episode, Footnote to Murder. And join me next time as Jessica and a slew of passengers are forced to take refuge from a storm at a remote diner when one of the passengers is found stabbed in his seat on a bus to Boston. Join me for that episode. Murder takes the bus. It's going to be fun times. So join me for all of that good times. And join me next time for more murder.